um, which is The Psychology of Money, and it is the greatest show on earth. And so I really hype this up with even my students at the college level. I have done this presentation with Kearney High several times, and just kind of kicking it out everywhere. But I truly think without understanding the behavioral finance piece that we're missing a part of the entire big picture of even behavioral economics. So the bigger picture of economics and personal finance together. So I know many of you, but I don't know all of you, which is fun. I love meeting all of our new friends. So I am currently the business teacher education coordinator at UNK. And with that, I also get to serve, as Matt said, the Center for Economic Education Director. I've been doing that. I think I'm in my seventh year now doing that. Um, those two roles. For the last year, I've become a part-time financial advisor at Wealth Plan Partners, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about how some of that experience has allowed me to talk a little differently with clients or with students a little bit. Um, I am in the final stages of my PhD. Finally, it's been like a 5-year process, but I've really been focusing on especially personal finance education. So it's nice to be able to tie all of my worlds together because they're all different, but they all play into each other. And then I was also a former high school business teacher, so I pull from a lot of that experience as well. But with that, we're going to talk today about your values and money. Why is saving so hard? And then how biases affect your decisions, but also through a little game action as well. So, money is everywhere. It affects all of us and confuses most of us. Everyone thinks about it a little differently. It offers lessons on things that apply to many areas of life, like risk, confidence, and happiness. Few topics offer a more powerful magnifying glass that helps explain why people behave the way they do than money. So that's why it is claimed to be one of the greatest shows on earth. And so that comes from Morgan Housel, who is the author of The Psychology of Money. I think a lucky person is going to get to win a copy of that book for attending today. But go ahead and put in the chat if any of you have actually read The Psychology of Money before. I'm I'll be curious to see if anybody is drawing on that experience. But I like putting in here, money is fascinating, yes, but even more so important. Um, and so there's a few parts to this that we need to think about when we talk about money with our students. And so there's an effect on students' experiences based off of their bias, their previous bias and their experiences. So, oh, we want to go forward. One thing I talk about and I hear about all the time is that finance often consists of those that are deemed the smartest. But is there any evidence it has made us better investors? What do you guys think? And you can come off mute or you can just hop in the chat, whatever. But I will be asking for volunteers. So do you think there's any evidence that you are a better investor if you are smarter? No. Okay. So thinking about it, does trial and error teach us to become better with our personal finances? And that's a good question. What do you mean by smarter? Okay. So and that's why I put in quotations the smartest. So does trial and error teach us to become better with our personal finances? Are we less likely to bury ourselves in debt or save for a rainy day? And so the book and just kind of a lot of the concepts out there about the psychology of money start to talk about how we should be looking at finances compared to how it already is being looked at. So engineers can determine the cause of a bridge collapse because of what? Does anybody want to take a guess? So engineers out there, a bridge collapses. Often they're able to determine the cause of that. Why? Anybody want to take a guess? Nobody's brave enough in the chat. Foundation damage. Okay, so that's kind of part of it because it fell. Okay, so that is a great part right there. So she's saying it without saying it. Physics. Okay, so physics isn't controversial, it's guided by laws. Where finance is different. And so kind of physics leads into like it fell. With finance, it's guided by people's behaviors. And so how I behave might make sense to me, but might look crazy to you. Um, and that's one of the things where we have to really be careful about how we talk about money with our students, because you are going to have very different scenarios that your students have experienced in within their own families and how they view money. So we have to understand that money and experiences is not universal. So Morgan actually quotes in the book, people do some crazy things with money, but no one is crazy. They just have different backgrounds and experiences. So like, somebody, especially it was so much harder for me to understand some concepts before having a child and how money was being spent. And I was, now my sister and I were just talking on the phone this morning, and we were talking about daycare, and her husband's work is now going to start offering free daycare, so free daycare, but they're trying to decide if that's actually the right decision or not, because then they might lose their summer spot and all these different things. And to me, I'm like, hey, free daycare sounds awesome because it's expensive, but then, there's a lot of different things that go into it because of the different experiences they have down in Lincoln versus here in Kearney. And that's just one little minor, just today, example of like how her and I think about money might be a little differently. um, and so when we're teaching personal finance, a lot of times what we're teaching, and rightly, I mean, where it comes from, it makes sense, but it's taught in too much of a way like physics, kind of like rules and laws, and not enough like psychology with emotions and nuance. And so throughout the rest of my presentation, I'm even going to give some classroom application examples of like, how can you start to get students to think about the emotions that are triggered when they think about money and specific scenarios. Like if they're presented with, would you do this or would you do this? Answer, and then why. So this is kind of what I was saying with, imagine you're teaching a class with a child whose parent is a hedge fund manager, and then another whose family is in survival mode. So they will view every conversation about money through different lenses. And so I like this statement right here. So it's all about how we interpret risk, how we interpret reward, and how we interpret what is enough. And so that's something that we kind of need to talk with our students about, is like, what are you willing to risk? Okay, because that's going to look different for everybody. Okay, what does a reward look like to you? Is it safety and security because you're able to make it to the next day with the little bit of income you have? Or is your reward much different, and you've added $1,000 to your savings that month because you were gifted it from a grandparent at your birthday or something? And then to each person, what is enough? This is one of my favorite stories. I literally share this with every student group I talk to. It came from the book, The Psychology of Money, as well. But there's two different scenarios that he compares to each other, and they're like two of the most powerful ones. I've put most of this up here so you can at least see it, but I'm going to give a little more context about the two. So there's a tech genius. They actually removed the name for anonymous purposes. We'll go the easy route with that. But so he made hundreds of millions of dollars in his 20s because he helped develop a key part of Wi-Fi technology. He was deemed as having, he did. It wasn't just people saying it, but he had immense intelligence, incredible timing, and opportunities. Okay. Well, he struggled a little bit with that. So there's actually a real story of him at a hotel in California, in LA. And so they were at the hotel, and there's a water area behind it. And him and his friends were skipping gold coins across the water to see who could skip the coins the furthest. And, So again, my experience is that's crazy to me, right? We've talked about that. But beyond that, he also just like didn't care how he treated people and how he treated his money otherwise. They broke a lamp at the hotel and they told him it was going to cost $500 to fix it. And he like threw a couple grand at them and then said, "Don't insult me ever again and get out of my face," and just like threw his money away. Okay. So, yes, he had hundreds of millions of dollars, but he put money into high risk investments. He was overconfident. He clearly made decisions through emotional and irrational decision making, and then had lavish spending and speculative bets. So, he actually lost almost everything. Okay, so then Morgan compares him to Ronald Reed. So Ronald Reed worked as a gas station attendant and janitor in Vermont at a school there. Um, the kids and staff said that he showed up to school every single day in the same old flannel shirts. He lived in the same house he bought when he was young. He drove a secondhand car. He never got married. And over time, he secretly invested. I mean, and I say secretly just because nobody else knew about it. I don't know if he really intended it to be secret or not, but he just kind of kept to himself. And so he invested small amounts in blue chip dividend stocks over decades. And when he died in 2014, he had a net worth of over $8 million. And the only way people found out about it is because he left money to his local library and hospital. And that's when they realized, and they were like, wait, Ronald? Well, and so it's one of those things like if you were to ask students and say, okay, who do you think is a millionaire? A tech genius who made millions in his 20s, or Ronald Reed, the janitor? Okay. A lot of times I have students who, I mean, I think some of them catch on of like, oh, she's gonna get us here. So we're gonna say the janitor, but like a lot of times if I give no context, no nothing, and I just say like one simple statement, almost everyone then would say the tech genius is the millionaire. And that's not always the case. Keep the chat here. Oh, Matt. Okay. So I leave this or I say this to you guys because the tech genius understood the science of wealth creation, but not the art of keeping it. Where Ronald Reed, he wasn't a stock picker or a financial wizard. He just lived below his means. He stayed consistent and he let compounding do the rest. And I know that I learn a lot. I guess learn and I retain information a lot better when I have more tangible stories to latch it onto. And so when you talk with your students about behavioral finance, a lot of times we're talking with students that maybe are freshmen or sophomores because we might not get them junior and senior year. And even then, their decision making depth isn't maybe as broad as it would be when they're 25 years old or when they're 35 years old, And so we have to really make sure to provide stories like this that help them understand the impact of the decisions that they make behind their personal finance choices. So, okay, we've just talked about these two. It kind of seems simple, but why is it so hard to save or invest? So we are going to take a little peek at that. So we are going to do a little game here. So this is one I love doing with students. I'm going to drop in the chat the link. So it's a Google sheet that so I've adapted it from, this is actually an adaptation from NGPF. I kind of changed just a little bit about it, but you'll need to go to the file and make a copy because right now you are only viewers of it. So the link is in the chat. So go ahead and make a copy of it. The first line is just kind of an example. So it won't make sense yet until I go through the instructions a little bit, but it'll kind of be our game example. And then I need let's see here. I usually I have yard die that I use, big yard die, and so then we roll with that. So then what you can do also is roll a die on the screen in front of your students. Let me click some okay. Okay, so what you need to know now that you guys have that up, and Lynn, I saw you just kind of joined us in the chat. I'm going to drop it again because I'm not sure if it'll be there. Go ahead and open up this link for rolling with the market. We're going to talk about why is it so hard to save and invest. So each of you are going to start the game with a fictional balance of $100. Okay, so that's kind of why that $100 there is in that entry spot there, but you can kind of adjust for the example from there. We're going to have 5 rounds, just so I'm not here with you all night because we all have dinner and things to do. But after 5 rounds, the player with the highest balance is going to be the winner. So the way it works, step 1. So it's as simple as deciding, and we're talking about like, we're going to think about risk and what your personal willingness is. So step 1 is going to be, are you in the market or are you out? Just a decision of in or out. And then you're going to mark your decision on the handout. So you'll see that you would mark right here, in or out. Okay, so that's step 1. In or out of the market, and that's all you have to decide at that point. And so kind of up here, the instructions also say like the basic principles of investing may seem simple, like buy low, sell high, set it and forget it, and more. But the psychology of investing can illuminate why we human beings can sometimes make investing more difficult than it needs to be. So this is going to kind of elicit some of those emotions from that. Okay, so step 2. If you chose to be out, you are going to put a +1 in the if out, add +1 column on your worksheet. At that point, you've decided, you know what, I'm not really willing to risk it this round, but I do want to, just grow a little bit with my money. And so you will get that +1. So right here, if you put out, this one right here, this second column from the end, you would put a +1 there, and you would not do anything else here. Okay, you would just do the +1 right there. Your ending balance then in the end would be about 101. Okay, however, if you decided you are in the market, I have a couple more instructions for you guys. Okay, so for those of you who are in the market, the first step is to roll the die, and we are going to figure out if the market is going to go up or down based off of the number. So if I roll a 1 or a 2, that means that the market is going down that round. If I roll a 3, 4, 5, or 6, that means the market is going up that round. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll right now. And then from there, we'll see what we get. Okay, so we got a 2. Okay, so what that means is the market is going down. So on your sheet, I rolled a 2, and that means the market is going down. Okay, so if you chose to be in, this is just a practice round. So if you chose to be in, we got a 2. That means we have a bear market, and we have down. So now what I'm going to do is I would roll 3 die. And so that's why I use like, you can use like little die. You can use the big yard ones. You can use the computer, whatever. I always have a volunteer kind of help as well when I'm doing it in person. Let's see. I just want 3 that are 6-sided here. So I'm going to go. Okay. So I have 3 dice that got rolled. We got a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And so what you would do then is in your roll total, you would get 12. Okay. So unfortunately, what would happen in this round is if you said you were in the market and it went down, you now have an ending balance of $88. Okay. So that's kind of just a practice round. All right. So we're gonna do it a couple more. We're gonna go, well, we'll just call that the practice round and we'll go like just through 5 here, just so you guys can kind of see how things balance out. Okay, so on line 2 right now, go ahead and put $100 in there since line 1 was just practice. Or I guess you could, since we're not writing it down, we could always just delete this out. Okay. Okay, so we have a starting balance of $100. So what I need you all to decide right now is, are you going to be in or out of the market, and write that down. So I'll give you just a couple seconds to do that. All right, we're going to roll 1 time. We got a 6. Okay, so if you chose to be in the market and I have a 6, the market is going to be going up. Hi, honey. We had a little joiner for just a couple minutes. Can you say hi? Okay, so then we're going to do a 3 dice roll total here. There we go. So we have a 6 plus 6 plus 1. We have 13. So that means if you chose to be in the market, you just got yourself $113. But if you, honey, Carly, hey, can you go watch TV? Go watch Bluey and get it. You can get another snack, okay? Okay. So if you chose to be out of the market, you got a +1, and you would end with a total of 101 for that round. Okay. So your next line starting balance would be 113 or 101, depending on where you were. So we're gonna kind of go through this a little quick here to just get a couple more rounds in us. So the next one is a 4. Okay, so I probably need to give you more time to decide if you're in or out. But if you're in and you have a 4, that means the market is going up. We have an 8. So that means you're making $8. So we just went from $113 to $121. This time, maybe I'm not feeling quite as risky. And I'm going to say that I'm going to be out because I'm up $121. I'm feeling pretty good. So you guys go ahead and get your calculations in there and decide if you're in or out of the market based off of what you've been doing. We're going to do a 1 dice roll. We got a 1. So in that case, the market's going to be going down. We got to see how much it's going to go down, though. So 7. But I chose to be out, so I get a +1, which means I end at 122. However, if you chose to be in the market at that point, you would be down 7. Math is so hard for me. So 114. You'd be at 114. Okay, I'm going to do one more round just for you guys to kind of make another decision. So I'm going to be starting out at 122. Got to decide if you are in or out of the market. I am going to go in. Okay, let's see what happens. A 2, shoot. So if you were like me and chose to be in the market, we're going to lose a little bit of money. Let's see how much we're losing. 12, dang. Okay, so I'm going to go down to 110. Let's see. Okay, well, we got 2 ups and 2 downs. We can't end on an even area there. So we got to do a 5th round, like I said. Okay, so I'm starting at 110. I'm going to be in the market because I trust it over time. Ah, shoot. Got a 2. So I'm going down. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Okay. So at least we got it evened out. So now we got to figure out what it's going down. Okay. 11. So 11 means that I am down to $99. Okay. So I ended at 99. I want you guys to put in the chat how much your ending balance was right now after 5 rounds. I want to see who ended with the most. We got Lynn with 96. Did the same as me, 99, 99. Got 102. 99's 91. Okay, I think that's about everyone. Okay. So I do want some people to kind of, on this next part, we're going to chat a little bit. I went through those instructions already. Okay. So we're going to kind of come back to this. What range of emotions would you experience as you played the game? Do you think, like, if you went through 10 rounds of this, even answering for yourself or even thinking about kind of what students would answer, like, what range of emotions did you experience as you played the game? Anybody willing to either say or put in the chat?
I think for me, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. For me, I was in right away, and then the second round I was out. Well, it was up both times. So I was like, well, I'm gonna be in again. And then it was down. So I was like, oh man. I don't know. And it's like this scared, I guess, for me feeling of like worry when I like wasn't actually real money on the line, but I still felt that way.
Yeah, I didn't even realize I did it until after, and I was like, ah, man, and I like hit the table. And so even things like this can just kind of like pull out different emotions from you. Um, you know, it could be different things as like maybe you're in every single time or something. So like did any of you change your strategy? Lynn kind of shared about her strategy after the first round. So like did anybody else change their strategy as we went through the next couple of rounds and like what factors might have influenced that strategy? Anyone? Anyone and everyone. Okay. Well, I guess I can share a little bit here. So for me personally, when I was sitting there thinking, I was like, oh, well, we've been in, so like let's just try it out just a little bit. And so it worked that one time, but I was like, oh, it's not, I looked at here, I'm gonna go back to that sheet actually. So I went and I'm thinking like, okay, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? There's 4 options that mean we're going to go up. There's only 2 that mean we're going to go down. So you'd think right then and there's a higher chance to go up. And so I was like, okay, we're going to go back in. So like that's my strategy personally. I was like, there's more chance of it going up. You can see your students getting very competitive and loud. They do. They get very competitive, but it wasn't your money. Yes. You were at your lowest, Jamie, so you decided to stay in on the final or the 4th round. Yes. And you can add, I mean, I usually have 10 rounds here because with only doing it 5, it kind of went pretty quick. And then I always do like, some sort of incentive a little bit for whoever like has the highest ending balance, like a dum dum sucker or something. But it's very interesting to see like with the competitiveness of like there will be some that are like in every single time because, of what they've been taught. Especially in the classroom is like, because I even show them like, okay, and then I'm going to show you kind of here what I do with them. So S&P 500. Okay. So then what I usually do at some point in time when I'm talking with students is we do look at the market and it's like, okay, so we're just looking at one day right now, right? So one day we're doing pretty well. If we were looking last week was a little rough. And if you're teaching personal finance right at this moment, or even econ, I'm sure there were conversations that were surrounding that a little bit. And so then students are going to question things of like, well, how safe is it if that's happening? And so we have to be the ones that empower them um, with the knowledge that it's okay. Okay, because of what historical averages have showed us over time. So if we're looking at 1 month, we see red, that's going to scare some people. But here we go. Okay, we just keep clicking out year to date, 1 year, 5 years, and our max. Okay, so I at different points in time talk to them too of like, okay, and you got to depend on what's going on, but like when it comes to the 5 year, we talk about okay, what happened in 2022? Does anybody remember a big worldwide event that was happening in 2022 that might have impacted the markets? And I kind of let them sit and think. And like, that's how we can bring some of those current event things into everything. Like personal finance is a lot easier to bring current events into compared to like, I don't know, maybe even accounting. But it's still sometimes hard because we just teach the knowledge that's in front of us. And so we can talk about why the markets went down. And then, but notice they didn't stay there. Okay. And so we worked ourselves up. And so this is just 5 years, and then we can talk about even historically, even other worse times. What happened after the financial crisis of 2008? Okay. We sank. And then we came up and up and up. And then in 2020, right here, March 20th, saw a huge dip. Okay. COVID. And then we come up here and then we're in 2022 again. And then we're back up. And, at one point last year, we were at the highest we've ever seen. And so I really talk with students about, like, again, like we said, it's all based off of your experiences, but it's based off of risk, return, and what's enough for you. And talking with students too, like, if somebody grew up if their family lost everything because of the back during the Great Depression, and that has continued them to have struggles throughout time, that's going to impact even today's generations of decision making. The like, if somebody was a stockbroker back then, they probably aren't as willing to give up their money as somebody that didn't experience that today. And so it's really important to kind of talk with students about like, yes, we have different decisions that go into things, but then showing them over the time, what some of that works with. And so all of that to say, okay, so that's why I got ahead of myself a little bit here, but it has a lot to do with investing and saving. And so one of the biggest things, honey, can you stay with Auntie Carly? No. No. Will you be quiet? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, I am big on values, okay? Students need to understand their values and what drives their financial behaviors. Hold on, sorry. Okay. So I linked here, and so I'm actually going to share this presentation in the chat with you guys so you can get this link as well, but then I'll also pull this one up here. Okay, so the first link I sent you guys is the link to the presentation, but the second link is this article right here. And what I usually have students do is like a money personality quiz. And I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later, but I get them to start thinking about what do they value? Do they value time with their family? Do they value time with their friends? So is that where they're going to spend their money? Or do they value spending money on the nice things like the fancy cars and different stuff like that? And so there's four areas we talk about. And so there's inner values, there's social values, physical values, and financial values. And so I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a second here to just look at the inner values. I'm not going to read it all to you guys. Okay, so the important part of after kind of reading through that is understanding like if you are strong with inner values, what kind of effect does that have on your money habits? And so if you do have those strong inner values, that means you're going to trust your gut and follow that inner voice, which can give you the resourcefulness to overcome a sudden money crunch. But it could also cause overconfidence. So what we need to do is we need to realize like what our money personality says about us and then why it's a strength, but then also like what are maybe some things that are our rainy day things, our weaknesses with it. Um, and so social values, I'll let you guys read through this one a little bit. Kind of zoom in again. Oh, it's zoomed in all the way. Okay. Social values. So this is the one that's, relationships are a little more important maybe. Cultural preferences though too is so we learn early from our families, and that can influence our money habits. We unconsciously act out in our adult money habits in responses to things that happen in our childhood. So, um, you know, if you always went on vacations as a child, that might be something that you want to continue through, whether you and that just is instilled in you, and whether you have the money or not, you do it. And so that may or may not be a good thing, depending on if you have the money. Um, so um, and you'll notice like we might have a little bit, or we will have each of these because they're the four categories that drive our financial decision making. We just might lean towards one or the other more than somebody else. So here's physical values. So when I'm talking with students, I would say, I mean, they hit all four categories, but uh, you'll notice that a lot of the athletes might say something with like physical values because they like to go to the gym and take care of themselves in certain ways. And some of the boys, I always respond, and even myself, I fall into this category. I spend more money on supplements than I do other areas of my life. And so what might look crazy to somebody sitting next to me in the classroom is how much money I do spend on protein powder and different things like that. But that's something that I value closely. But it can translate to overspending on material possessions if left unchecked. So that's really important. Like physical values can get out of control pretty quick because of that material possessions part of it. Um, and then financial values is the last one here. So these are the people that think long term more so about their money and the sustainability of it. maybe thinks through purchases more rationally, no matter what they are. But it's really important that we get our students to understand what their specific values are and what they mean to them and why they set the specific goals they do. There's another activity on NGPF that a lot of people do, maybe in other areas in terms of like budgeting. But I think the bean game even is a great part of understanding behavioral finance, more so even than budgeting, because it shows I was at Grand Island and there was a kid that it cracked me up. We're trying to figure out like through the bean game and some different stuff, and they had to take some. So for those that don't know, like you start with 20 beans. And then you make your decision of where you're going to budget it and where it's going to go throughout the different categories of like housing, transportation, cell phone, insurance, and all these different categories. And then you actually get 7 that are taken away. So then you're left with 14 and you have to like either keep them or reallocate them based off of however you see fit. And he was like, well, I don't need health insurance anymore because I need unlimited data on my cell phone. And I was like, oh, buddy, we got a lot to learn. Because I was like, that's not how it works. I was like, there's some things that you have to have for protection and safety, more so than maybe unlimited data on your phone. But to them, and that's what I'm talking about, like it's all the different experiences and what we've come from that helped drive these decisions. So they have to understand these. So one of the things I do with students is it's Empower. So empower.me. This is a good one. What's your money personality? So if students are like one-to-one with devices, they can take the quiz down here. And I think it takes them through like 11 questions. I'll put this in the chat as well. But then what I really like to do is I pair students up then and have them talk about either like, were they the same? So I actually do 2 different rounds of it. So I'll have students pair up and talk about if they were the same personality, and then kind of talking about like how they compare and how some of that matches up and some of the strategies that play into that. And then I actually have them match up with somebody who's not their personality. So then that way they can talk about maybe some of the strategies they need to overcome and learn about like what somebody, so like if there's a savvy saver, compared to somebody who spends, like, okay, what are some strategies that saver does that the spender maybe needs to do? But I do like that one. um and so probably more than an average person, I spend talking about this. And when we were writing up the Canvas course that NCEE has, it was important to me that behavioral finance and economics kind of came first, because I think that as you make the decisions you do, it impact, like, knowing what you value matters, because then that's going to help you know how you're going to invest and save money and some different things like that. And so I teach this very early on in my personal finance class. And there's a new book. Oh, shoot, where's my bag? Mm, I brought the book home for you guys. Hold on, I got it here. Okay. So, here's the book. So, How Not to Invest by Barry Ritholtz. And what's awesome about it is the foreword is actually written by Morgan Housel, who wrote The Psychology of Money, which fueled this passion of mine, of the topic. And so the guy that I work for financial advising gave this to me today. And then I was able to read some parts of it, and I'm including it already today for you guys. One of the things they talk about is that we spend so much time as a society trying to figure out how to invest the right way and how to maybe time the market and do some different things like that. And that's actually not the best strategy. Let me get back to presenting here. So what Barry says is that The best investors spend more time avoiding mistakes than chasing brilliance. And so I'm going to talk about that just a little bit here. Okay, so this still all ties into like behavior. So behavior first, knowledge second is one of the things that he teaches. And so I included some things in here of like how you could translate this to your students. So many believe that investing is all about stock picking and market timing. Like I even have people like we even have clients that call us and we're like, trying to time the market of political things that happened last year, or even with what's happening with the tariffs. They're like, okay, so I'm going to take some money out now, but then the key thing to that is you don't ever know when to put your money back in because there's a graphic out there that is so cool, and maybe I'll try to pull it up of like when you try to time the market, you'll basically miss out on like hundreds of thousands of dollars by just trying to do that. I'll find that graphic if I can. But what we need to do is we need to teach our students more about emotions, and that should have said discipline. Those matter most. So, financial habits. We have to talk about that, not just facts. And so, one of the biggest things to talk about is avoiding lifestyle creep. And so, as you start to make a little bit more money, people tend to spend more money, okay, rather than save more money. And so what happens then is I'm going to use myself as an example. Unfortunately, this happened to me. So my husband and I, last year, so December of 2023, actually, he had to take a significant pay cut. We're talking like in the end, probably about a $15,000 pay cut. And that was really hard. It was needed, and um, it was the best decision we made at the time. But that was really hard to do in terms of we were used to living life a certain way. This last year has been financially the hardest year we've ever had, in terms of like cutting things out, and I'll be honest, like there were areas that got overspent because it was just what I had been used to doing for like 10 years. And so I wish I would have been trained sooner about the lifestyle creep, and not letting that impact me as much, and knowing like just because I'm making more money doesn't necessarily mean I need to be spending more money, and saving some of that instead. And so then recognizing what emotional triggers are with our students. And so I have some activities built in here, for you at the end, but talking about fear and greed and FOMO and how that influences our money decisions, because social media, even at our age, impacts us more than we realize, depending on what platforms we're on and who we follow. And so we have to teach, um, you know, it's okay to buy the concert ticket and to do the things as long as you are doing the saving and investing as well. Um, like if you've paid yourself first and everything is where it needs to go and you have $200 left over, do whatever you want with that $200. I don't care, you know, because you've done everything else. Okay. The other thing we need is avoiding mistakes is actually a strategy. So frequent mistakes consist of over trading, chasing trends like GameStop, remember that a couple years ago, ignoring costs, and then letting ego drive our choices. So we need to teach our students about decision hygiene. And so, what can I do to reduce the odds of regret? And then reflection over reaction. So pause before making money decisions. I actually have a note on my phone, like in the notes app, and I have like for later purchases. So I write down when I see something on Amazon that or whatever it might be that I want, but I put it down on the list and then I come back to it and I decide whether that purchase was actually something I needed or not. It almost caused me to miss buying something for my daughter's birthday today, but I'm glad because then I was able to find a better deal on something. So it worked out in the way it was supposed to, and thankfully Amazon delivers fast enough. But teaching our students some of these different habits of like how we can avoid making those irrational decisions. Simplicity wins. So complexity often disguises risk. So the best portfolios are boring. And I know that's hard for students because seriously, they like, I have people in my classes that are like, what stocks should I be investing in? And what should I? And it's like, okay, we're going to talk about this throughout the whole concept of the class, but being consistent beats being clever, and then trust the repeatable systems. And so, even with our clients, like we have a bunch of ETFs that are in there. Like I don't actively manage every single day what's going on. It's more passive management, and then we rebalance. And it's so, I tell students it's like saving 10% of every dollar they get. That's a trustworthy system. And then the last one here is you are not the average investor. So, guys, it's crazy how many strategies are being sold to the public without any consideration for like specifics. And so, when students work with like financial advisors, if a person is not like a financial planner, they actually don't have a fiduciary responsibility to look at your time horizon, your risk tolerance, or your lived reality, anything like that. They can just recommend a product to you because they can make money off of it. So what we need to do is we need to teach students that there's no one size fits all advice. Um, every single person has a different scenario. And by time horizon, it's like, how long do you have until you need that money? Whether it's buying a house or whether it's retirement, we need to make sure students know the end goal and then are able to work backwards from there. And then what we've kind of been talking about today, students need to explore their own financial values, needs, and goals really thoroughly. Okay, so my last bit here is for you guys, classroom applications. It's like, okay, so all this information is great, but how do we apply it with our students? So some ideas that I've used and cycle through. So you can use investment mistake case studies, real or simulated. Sometimes I use real people, and then sometimes I just make up some or have ChatGPT generate some scenarios. But they can be used for discussion or journaling prompts. You can use this to start a discussion around why people make mistakes. Um, that's a good, like, especially like a bell ringer type activity or end of the day exit ticket type thing too. Um, April is Financial Awareness Month. So you could always hold a financial behavior week. And during that week, you could have students track their emotions that are actually tied to spending and saving. The last one on this page here, like a would you rather financial edition game. So you could create different trade-off scenarios, like would you rather earn 80,000 doing what you love or earn 200,000 doing something you hate? Or would you rather get rich quick with high risk or get wealthy slowly with low risk? And so you can ask ChatGPT to generate a bunch of scenarios for you, and you can do them as a class. You can break them up into groups, and then you can have conversations around the different emotions and strategies that go into some of those decisions. And then since I shared the link, I know if anybody's writing anything down, I can always come back to it too, but I know we got 4 minutes left. Think that, yeah, this is my last slide. So I already showed you guys the financial personality quiz, where you can have them learn about their own personality, compare, and then kind of contrast. And then the last one here is financial decisions under pressure. So give students a scenario like, okay, winning $10,000 or a stock drop of 20%, and have them act out a response that they would like, what would be their response based off of different emotional mindsets. And you can assign them like if you were the calm investor, the panic seller, the overconfident trader, or the patient saver. Like, how would you handle that scenario as that specific role play person? And so you can kind of do some of that as well. But that way it gets students thinking about it rather than just hearing you talk about it. But I love this topic so much. So I probably, like I said, spend a little bit more time on it than others, but yeah, okay. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts, or do you guys do anything with this topic that you absolutely love, that you want to share with anybody else as well?